So-Called is sponsored by loveboiseparks.org, which donates profits to support, promote, and preserve open spaces in Boise, Idaho. Use promo code SOCALLED for 10% off all your purchases at loveboiseparks.org.
If you're that veteran that just you can't see the light right now, there are those of us out there that want to help you find that light, and we're here.
This is Mark Wojcik, and I'm wondering, how's your so-called career? Welcome to So-Called, the podcast that explores the why and how of work. On today's episode, we meet Eric Mraz, owner and operator of Cold Cactus Media Productions. When we met, I learned that Eric started Cold Cactus as a project in a capstone class at Boise State University.
I have this background in communications and especially video production. And I really wasn't sure what I wanted to be doing other than I knew I wanted to be doing. I have a job that was a purpose, especially giving back to a community. And so I started circling around the Boise community and the veteran community, two communities that I'm a part of. And it was at the time that, the statistics of 20 veterans a day, and now I think they use 22 a day to say are struggling and committing suicide. Mm-hmm. And so with all the hubris in the world, I said, I think I can come up with something that'll help lower that number for suicide. And that something was, the way my brain works was, well, I'm good at video production. I know quite a few people in the Boise area. And so I want to create a video series that's going to help lower the suicide rate. Mm-hmm. And so that's really how Cold Cactus came to be. And as far as the name, I love alliteration. My mother, who has passed, but she was loved cactus. We always had cacti gardens, cacti in the house, paintings of cactus. And my last name, Mraz, is Slavic. It's from my family comes from Czechoslovakia, and it means frost. And if you actually say it right, it's Mraz, and it means frost, hence Cold Cactus.
I asked Eric what it takes to get an ambitious project like his off the ground.
But what I do have is a very interesting network of people that have volunteered to help me. And I would love for someday to be, a cash business where, we're all making money for doing this. But really the purpose was I reached out to people so Gemma Gaudet I reached out to her, and I actually reached out to her first because we have a history of working together. And she, as you know, voices and hosts Idaho Matters for public radio at Boise State. And I had always remembered this one story that we'd worked together that has since been turned into not the work we did, but there's been documentaries on it. And I'm like, man, that's like everything we uncovered. She did such a great job on that. And I always remember that her father was a military veteran and she was very close to her father. And so I kind of reached out to her. And then I also reached out to my old assignment editor who had since retired. So I said, oh, here's someone who's retired. Maybe they'll have some time to help me. And he has screenplays under his belt. And he's published a couple novels, Steve Bertel. And so I reached out to Steve Bertel and Gemma Gaudet both. We had a Zoom meeting. And the first thing Gemma said was, hey, the band's back together. Because at one point we all worked together at the same news outlet. And so we started talking. We just discussed what the military meant to each of us. Beyond being a veteran myself, I'm also my father and my grandfather both served. And anyone that has a connection to military knows that struggle of leaving service and returning to home, it's a real struggle. What we eventually landed on for the name of the series is Darkness to Light. Because we started collecting these stories, talking to different veterans that we all seem to kind of go through our own personal low point, and then you either choose the negative route, which in my eyes would be suicide,
Mhm.
or you have the veterans would have some type of crisis that seems insurmountable, something that they're just, how do you come back from that? And
Right.
yet they do. Um, and in a lot of ways, the Cold Cactus and Darkness to Light, that's my comeback story.
Mhm.
Uh, and it really feels that way. We're all busy people, but we said, you know what, we can find time to do this, and start. And so we reached out to who will be the first veteran in our pilot episode. And that episode is going to be titled, and it might still get shopped a little bit, but for right now, it's Heat of the Moment, the George Nichols story. What we hear from George, not necessarily about his personal story, but the reason he's willing to share is exactly what we're going for. And it's not to help himself, it's to help anyone that might find themselves in that situation. And so right now we're still very much a word of mouth, those high profile veterans, and we've really only focused on the pilot episode. But I would like to do at least 22, kind of the symbolism with 22 a day.
Yeah.
That the Valhalla Project, in my eyes, they're the ones that kind of started that. Getting someone to ask you about what 22 a day means, and it's your opportunity to educate on the struggles that veterans go through and veteran family members.
You can learn more about Gemma Gaudette by listening to her interview from So-Called Season 2 in our archives at socalledpodcast.com. Eric and his team of volunteers are working on final edits of the first video, fitting in work as their schedules allow. For the release date, to follow progress on the series, and to learn how to support Cold Cactus, connect with Eric Mraz on LinkedIn.
And that's the whole point of this video series, is to highlight those programs and services that specifically worked for one individual, but may get you where you need to be. And all you got to do, this is the digital age. Get on your computer and be as specific as you want to be. And I almost guarantee you will find what you're looking for. If you're that veteran that just, you can't see the light right now, there are those of us out there that want to help you find that light. And we're here.
Eric began his career during his senior year in high school, where he was working at a television station operating the teleprompter for a morning show and at a video store after school. Eric planned to study video production in college.
I got accepted into the Art Institute of Seattle for video production. And I thought, great, here's my big break. I'm going to go I'm doing all the steps. I got the job at the video store, just like Quentin Tarantino did, just like Kevin Smith did. Now I'm going to go learn the important stuff in Seattle. And I realized I did not have the money to go to a private art school.
Eric continued working at the television station, where his curiosity to learn and natural talent led him to develop and expand his skill set.
I worked my way up. Like every job that I was able to learn, I learned, teleprompter, studio camera, audio mixer. I was also great at popping in the anchor's ears and doing funny voices, like right before they were supposed to go on. That was kind of, I would break out I'd be like Scoob, what are we going to do? I don't know, Raggy. Or there's always room for a well-placed, oh, hey, pal. Just break out these cartoons that I grew up with, these voices. And so people were like, hey, do you have a news voice? And so then I came up with the Eric Mraz reporting voice, and it was something very easy to talk in.
After a few years, the news director offered Eric a contract to be an on-air reporter, but Eric wasn't sure that this was the path he wanted to pursue.
I couldn't see the forest for the trees. That's that's a really good way to describe it for me. I couldn't see the forest for the trees. I was working towards something, but feeling like I was going nowhere. And I turned it down and said, oh, sorry, I just signed a 5-year contract with the United States Army. And of course, everyone was like, oh, are you going to do broadcast? Or are you going to do communications? And I said, no, I joined the military police corps. And even to this day, sometimes I'm like, man, everyone around me had to be worried, like, what is going on with this guy? Because I was doing well. I was a 21-year-old. I owned my own home, had a nice car, had a great job. But I was just feeling burnout and like I wasn't doing enough of service. And I thought, what a great way to not only serve my country, but then also serve the other soldiers. And that's the way I always viewed it. And I was active duty for 9 years and some change. And 10 years is when they say, get in or get out, or stay in or get out, that I was up for that retirement time. And I had been going through a real crisis of conscience, kind of internally, not really sharing it, not even with my wife, not my family, that just, I had already done 2 deployments. I was going on my 3rd deployment. All of them were a year long. One was actually 15 months, closer to 16 months. And, I was an E6 by then, a staff sergeant. By my last deployment, I had moved into the canine world, military working dog. And I deployed with a German Shepherd, Ito. He was my partner.
Both Eric and Ito were having a hard time keeping up with the teams, leading Eric to feel his time in the military might be limited.
They put me in a position where I was a kennel master. And so I basically became a logistics extraordinaire. I would get my teams their dog food, any kind of supplies they needed, like shampoo, things like everything, bullets, all the way down. Again, it was another real proud moment for me to be finally have people recognize that I needed to be in a position like that. And they put me in that position. And I earned a Bronze Star on that deployment. And I would call that, I've never been like a medal person or awards, I've never been like, oh, look what I've got. Look at my trophies. Look at this. But that Bronze Star is something that I'm humbled and proud to have received that.
It was during that deployment that Eric learned his mother had cancer, and at the same time, his command and retention teams wanted him to decide if he was going to stay in the Army. When they could not guarantee him an assignment closer to home, Eric had to decide.
And they basically said, nope, this is needs of the Army. You're going to go be a squad leader, platoon sergeant, and go back to Afghanistan or Africa or wherever we need you. And I said, okay, I'm out.
Yeah.
And all of my seniors were like, what are you doing? Like, you're halfway to retirement. Like, all right. And I was just, my injuries were catching up to me. It was getting harder and harder to stay within the weight limit. Cause I'm a big guy anyway. And it's like, sometimes I do just want to eat a donut and not go to the gym. And so I found myself out of the military.
In his post-military career, Eric has had a variety of jobs and attended college. He switched majors from mechanical engineering to business, but both of these options were missing an important element.
And I found myself getting further away from like leadership. And my whole time in the military, I really focused a lot on leadership, not just being a leader, because I was in leadership roles, but just understanding what leadership is and how it interacts. And so I stepped away from BSU, and then I came back and I found the MDS program, and I found the leadership certificate program. That is what kind of opened my eyes to, I'm ready to do something that I'm already have talent in. I've already kind of proved myself, even though I couldn't see that forest. I never realized what I had when I had it. And now I was finally at a place in my life where I said, everything's coming together, and I'm going to graduate and I'm going to create this documentary pilot. And that's what I'm going to do.
Is there anything else you're looking to do kind of in the future, what you're hoping to do next?
I think now that I'm not in school anymore, I think a lot of my focus is going to be just, narrowing down the schedule.
Yeah.
and still taking kind of one episode at a time. But, I have a lot of friends who are musicians. I'd love to see Cold Cactus do some music videos. I've even talked to one of my old musician friends about doing a podcast titled Hi from Idaho. And just kind of, because we both were born and raised in Idaho, moved away. I was gone for 10 years. He was gone close to that. And then we both came back, and we're like, Idaho is a great place to live. Boise's a great city. But there is just some weirdness here. And we said, how fun would that be to have a podcast where we just talk about the weird things we've seen happen in Idaho, and not necessarily weird in like shining like negative or derogatory, just, odd things. Like, have you ever noticed that finger steaks don't really exist outside of the Northwest? That nowhere else do they call it pork and seeds? It's Korean barbecue beef with sesame seeds. But if you go into it like an Idaho Asian restaurant, it's called pork and seeds. So things like that. We're like, man, we could have a podcast, just all these weird things we've seen or noticed that are Idaho specific.
What advice would you have for your younger self?
I think I use that. I don't know if analogy is the right word, but I have a hard time seeing the forest for the trees. I think maybe just younger, I would tell myself that, hey, when people tell you that, listen. When people tell you you're doing good things, listen. Don't shy out. Don't be afraid of your own success. Because very much I've had plenty of opportunities. We could do a whole other episode on just the opportunities I didn't take because I just was too worried about taking that risk. And so I would tell myself, take some more risks. Yeah. Maybe not necessarily with your life, like joining the military and, you're an AV nerd and you're going to go, oh, I'm going to go be military police. Nah. Like maybe not those kind of risks, but definitely take some risks in your art and your, what you'd like to do. You know what? Something I've been telling myself, especially for the last year, and I think a lot of people doing this, is you're okay. Like that's something else I would tell like the young person, the young me, and any young person is, you're okay. It's okay. Just keep at it.
So Called is sponsored by loveboiseparks.org, which donates profits to support, promote, and preserve open spaces in Boise, Idaho. Use promo code SOCALLED for 10% off all your purchases at loveboiseparks.org. Our theme and transition music was composed by Roberto Cavaco. All other stylings are the sound of my voice. If you enjoyed today's episode, please let us know. Subscribe and leave us a review. So Called is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and wherever you get your podcasts.